I ended up learning a lot today. I found out that, he didn't, say anything that, uh, God. So he didn't say anything that was like really terrible or anything or really inaccurate. I found out, I watched his other video where he was talking about this stuff and, yeah, hold on, just to explain, where he was talking about that stuff and JavaScript and everything, and I ended up learning quite a bit about XPath and CSS selectors, so that I could, you know, navigate to exactly where on the page, I want to point a Python script to do something, and this is a Python script that should basically be able to submit poems to allpoetry.com. You know, but I have to turn that off for a sec so that I can do some editing work to, censor things, because I intend to ultimately submit the script to GitHub at some point, but credentials are hard coded into the script that I wrote. And yeah, I mean that's cool. I'm able to program in the XSS selectors to it, and so now that that's all properly done, this script has been tested. It basically works. You're gonna need the Chrome driver though to get it to work, and obviously you're gonna have to submit the Chrome driver path to, you know, and see this. It's a Python script, and it loads from Poem.txt, and it loads up Chrome driver, and then it basically submits your username and password, and then it uses the XPath as the elements, and it gets that stuff together, and it finds the IDs for them. I had to go over to XPath because it was so deeply buried and everything in there, but it helps me program ultimately a script to submit something to a page, and I mean that's very useful information to know, even if this is a generated script with ChatGPT. I mean, there's a lot of things in here that I understand already. It's loading up the Selenium WebDriver, and it's importing the various modules that it needs from Selenium up here. That it's importing the time module, and then your username and password are saved as variables that it sets up, and that R before the path is basically telling it to the escape variable, so that it doesn't interpret these slashes as the other way that it would interpret them, basically, if it didn't have the R there, and so it doesn't see them as like escape hatches, basically, or escape characters. And then it takes the poems, and then it opens the file poems.txt in read mode, basically, and it specifies UTF-8 encoding, and I don't know what as f means exactly, or like probably as file, but then it goes and specifies line, and it reads it basically, but it splits, lines, split by blank line, and then it takes for every chunk in lines, chunks. it strips. Oh God, I don't know exactly what all this does. That would be great to know, but it reads the poems from the file. Basically, this whole thing. I don't understand all of the script because it was generated, but I understand a good portion of it. And then it basically says that it's printing. It's printed. It's saying that it's loaded. This number of scripts from file, and the files are split up, and then it tells Chrome Chromium is set up with specifying, command line to disable blink features from automation control, disable extensions, disable info bars, and add and profile directory is now default, and now I get to uncomment to make it headless since it basically functions properly as far as an edit. So now it can totally do this, and now so it basically sets a variable for driver, and then it says WebDriver dot Chrome. Yeah, I'm not fully certain about what these lines do, but I mean I've learned a lot over just watching it generate because I read the code too, and then it navigates to the login page, and then it waits for the username and password fields, and then it basically this basically says that it selects the X path and then it waits until the element is clickable, to show up, and it just waits until it's able to do so, and then it takes this and it sends the username and it sends the password, and then it clicks the login button, and it waits until the login button is clickable, and then it specifies by XPath, and that's the XPath to it, and then it basically says log, and then it presses it basically so that it navigates to the button basically at this point, and then it presses the button, and this is a error if it can't find it, and then it sleeps for five, and then it goes to for poem and poems, which is a for loop, looping over. It gets poem, and then it adds, it starts to submit all the poems basically to it. It navigates to the submission page, and then it submits so this goes into the title of the poem page, and then this goes into the body page, and it waits for them to be clickable, obviously, and it uses the XPath to select them. Not totally sure about this one. I mean, this will send keys. Oh, right. So it specified a title variable and a body variable, basically, and I don't know if it did that anywhere, but how does it do that? Like, right. Okay, so title, body. So it's specifying variables. I mean, that's crazy that it doesn't have to assign them ahead of time with Python. Like, just as a comment on the way that language works, like you don't have to submit. You don't have to put like a variable at the top of the file. You don't have to declare them independently. You can just write a line of code and declare them in the body of the code. That's crazy. This is probably one of my complaints about Python. What I'm specifying here. I mean, some coders might love this, but I don't. I find this to be, if I were reviewing code, having to look at lines like this and realize that the variable was declared here would drive me crazy, because I would be like, I'd be looking all over the fucking place for it, and then, oh my god, insight-wise, there it is. But some coders might love that, but I certainly do not. And I obviously know that it's booting Chrome up with arguments basically, and it's I know what this does. I know what how these basically specify options as you're loading it up. I've used Linux, the command line Linux for long enough to know that stuff. But so I'm learning how to navigate web pages by using the XPath. Although web pages update way too frequently, for this to remain useful. But I mean, I don't think all poetry has updated in quite some while. And then it basically clicks the submit button, but it waits for this XPath to be, thing, and then it goes there, and then there's a confirmation page that it also has to press, and it presses that button, and then it confirms the submission, and then basically it quits, and it prints that it's all done, browser closed, and there you go. and obviously I had to load up the Chrome driver on a certain port and everything, and set that all up, and yeah, you know, that's your script, and I know a lot about it now, and I know about XPath and using XPath to find functions on websites, and now that's going to be incredibly useful to automate things and submit things with command line, and yeah, I got to get into GitHub. That's scaring me. GitHub. I don't know how the hell I'm gonna sign in. Oh hey, that's cool. Oop. Submit poem to poetry. This is a script that reads poems that submits them automatically to allpoetry.com. Repository. I will maybe have to set up a readme with it at some point, so creating a new file. Yeah, there's a few things to add and notes to add to it, obviously. I have to read over my browser, my console history here, so let me try and go back to the beginning. So, right. So, I ensured pip. No, God damn it. Yeah, doing coding work here, so hold on, let's maybe I just go over the command history. Right, so this command required, and I'm going to try to tell it to make a requirements.org, make a required. Make a requirements file for this, so that you can do this. So requirements.txt basically will be the first thing that I send to it. Since I know about those two, so requirements.txt save. All right. Copy. No, fuck you. Okay. And then save as requirements.txt. And there you go. So that's requirements.txt. And so usage, usage pip install requirements.txt. And then, edit the username and password variables, edit the username and password variables, some assembly required, put in user like that, some assembly required, put in user like that, edit the username and password variables, and what else is it? Also you'll have to grab the latest version of Chrome driver. I'm learning now by reading files like this about how to decode, and I will probably tell ChatGPT to tell me how to take, control of it. So you'll need to install. Uh, yeah, I'm definitely a ChatGPT enabled coder, but I do know that a lot of things, one thing I know about ChatGPT is that even though it makes most of the stuff, troubleshooting these files and correcting the errors that it makes to get functional code running. One of the upsides of it is that you can get a shit ton done in a very short window of time. As far as coding is concerned, it would take a lot longer to do this manually. Anyway, so there it's specifying that you need to grab that from there, and then Python submit .py, and so here we go. And then Python submit that, and then you you go and make a poems.txt file. You fill it. You put a poem in it. You put a poem in it. Then you run Python submit to poetry.py, and there you go. And there you go. Presto. It uses it. It uses their to overcome how nested the login page button to overcome how nested the login page buttons are. Anyways, this is a Python. So commit changes. Alrighty, submit to all poetry, and now add file, create new file. Name your file. Oh no, damn. Ooh. Let me make sure that that's absolutely right, correctly spelled. So let's changes, commit directly to the main branch, submit to all poetry, and now finally, submit to all poetry, submit to GitHub actually, so add file, upload files, right, choose your files, right, all poetry, submit. I was trying to do it in Rust, but I was having no end of problems, so submit to all poetry. And there you go. It's been committed, to the All Poetry website as not All Poetry, I mean GitHub website. Sorry, I've been a little bit out of it. And there you go. It's up on GitHub. Another contribution by yours truly, to the website. And, I hope everybody's happy. It's, if you're a poet, obviously this was a free reward for following me and everything, and I hope you enjoy the journey and me explaining the portions of the code that I understand, so far.